Hi guys and welcome back. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make a shaker door just like this one. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is establish the size of their door. And what you can see here is I've mocked up beautifully on this bit of plywood. I've just knocked up a little cabinet, if you like. You know, 4 bits of MDF screwed together, but this is going to represent our cabinet that we're going to be working on. So what we need to do is measure the overall width of our cabinet and the overall height of our cabinet. Now what I like to do, some people may differ on this, is I like to take my overall width and my overall height and then minus 4mm off of them dimensions. Now everyone's different, some people do 3, some people do 5. I think 4 is a nice happy medium. It gives you a nice 2mm gap right the way round the door, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you take 4mm off your overall, it'll give you a 2mm gap at top and bottom, and then the same on the width. And then when you bring your next cabinet over, it gives you a nice line, if that makes sense. So what we've got here is we've got 347mm minus our 4, that gives us 343mm, and in our height we've got 451, which gives us 447. So that's the overall dimensions of our door. So now we can come away from this cabinet and turn our attention to the rest of the door. Okay guys, so you can see that I've already got some stock out here. So what we've got essentially got here to make up a shaker door is 4 bits of MDF. So what we need here, a little bit of terminology for you here, is 2 bits here that are going to do the styles of our doors. So as we move forward, if you hear me referring to a style, it means the 2 bits of door, the 2 bits of material that run up the edge of the door. And then we're going to need a bottom rail and a top rail, and them two are self-explanatory. So yeah, they're your rails, they're your styles. If you imagine like you'd have a handle here opening the door that way. So that's what we need for that. So I like to use on a basic cabinet, 70mm is the size that I like to make, but that's personal preference. You can make this any dimension you want, it's completely up to you. Shaker door, I feel that the styles and the rails should be the same size, but yet again, personal preference, do whatever you want. If you're making a long door, you might want your middle rail and your bottom rail to be a little bit bigger. It doesn't matter really. Like I said, it's all personal preference up to this stage. You can do whatever you want. So now we've got that, what we need to do is cut our bits to the right size. And the way we're going to determine that is we're going to actually lay our door out, and then we can measure in between to get the size of our rails. So these are pretty self-explanatory on the rails. They're just 4mm shorter than the height of our cabinet, so that's fine. Them ones are easy to do. Okay, so we already know the height of these. That's absolutely fine. We don't need to do any more than just cut these to the full height of the door. So that's self-explanatory. The rails are a little bit different in the sense that the rails have to go in between our styles. So we have to do a little bit of math for that. So my styles are 70mm, so times 2 is 140mm. So there's the little bit of math you need to do in that. Obviously, if you're doing 100mm styles, it'll be 200mm for this little calculation we're going to do. So we're going to take the overall width of our door, which is 343mm, minus the width of our 2 rails, which is 140mm in my case, and that gives us a rail length of 203mm. So if you imagine when this door's out to its full width, which is 343, that measurement in there will be 203mm. This will all make more sense as we go ahead. So if you're a little bit confused now, carry on watching the video and it'll all make more sense to you as we go forward. Don't be disheartened yet. Okay guys, so I've gone ahead and cut them, so they're at 203mm. Now it's important to make sure that that is nice and square, if you can see that. Because if that's not square, what that's going to effectively do is make our whole door out a square. So realistically, they're the 2 most important shoulders on this. But you can already see this is starting to look like a shaker door now, albeit with no panel in the middle. But you might be doing glass in the middle. You know, this doesn't have to be a solid panel in the middle of this. It could be glass. Okay guys, so the next process, what we need to do is actually put a groove into all of these components, which is going to allow our panel to fit in. Now obviously that groove needs to be the same size as the material that you're using for your panel. I'm going to be using a 6mm panel in this because this is 18mm stock. So 18 less 6 gives me 12, and then that divided by 2 gives me another 6, if that makes sense. That was a tongue twister, sorry about that. So yeah, it'll give me 6mm 6mm groove, and then another 6mm on the other side. Yet again, this will all make sense. So for the stiles, it's nice and easy. It's one groove right the way down the edge, and that's all you need to do on the stiles. On the rails, on the other hand, we need to do the same groove running down that edge as we do on the stiles, but then we also need to put a groove in either end as well, so it'll give us 3 grooves on these, and that will make sense when we come to put all of this together. But that is essentially going to create our loose tenons for putting these together. So I'm going to jump over to the router table to do that. Now if you don't have a big router table like I've got, I'll link a video up the top here and a video up the top here of how you can make your own little basic router table. I made a video all on how to make one. But like I said, I'm going to be jumping over onto my big router table and doing it on there. Okay guys, so here's my router table over here that I'm going to be using. Now just for clarity, Trent did send me this router table to use in my videos. This isn't going to be a review on the router table. I can do that if you want. Let me know down in the comments if you want me to review this router table. But this isn't a review, this is just going to be me using the router table for the purpose of this video. What we're going to be using is a 6mm grooving cutter that I've got here, if I can get that to focus. Yeah, 6mm grooving cutter that I'm going to be using for this. You can use just like a biscuit cutter if you've got one of them, because they come up at 6mm as well. But I'm fortunate enough to have one of these, so I'm going to be using this for the purpose of this. So I'll get this loaded up and then I'll show you how to run it. Okay, so now we've got our cutter in there, it's time to set our height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put our little shim in here just to keep everything nice and safe. Okay, so now we're quite safe on there. And what you can see on the side of my stock here, I've actually put some marks in. So I've measured in 6mm there, 6mm there, and it's given me 6mm in the middle. So what we need to do is now adjust our cutter to that height. Okay, that's us all set up. Okay guys, so there's our grooves all running our side edges, as you can see from here. Now we need to turn our attention to put the grooves here, which is going to create space for our loose tenon to go in. Now my router table's got a mitre gauge that comes with it. If you haven't got one of them, what you can do is take a larger piece of MDF, I will show you here, a larger piece of MDF with a bigger end, and then you can actually back up your rail and run them through like that. And what that will do is give you far more stability rather than trying to run a thin piece through like this. So yeah, do that to keep your fingers nice and safe. Okay, so there's all of our grooves running, and you could stop at that point, to be honest with you. We could quite simply put our door together like that and call it finished. But what I want to do is put an extra step in there just to make these doors a little bit nicer and a little bit fancier. And the way that I want to do that is by knocking a 45 corner off here, and that's just going to create a shadow gap that I've used in all of my designs up to here. It means that you don't have to fill this joint, because when you've got the shadow gap 45 detail in there, it eliminates the need for that. And if there is any expansion and contraction in this, which there shouldn't be because it's MDF, but if there is, it will hide that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab out a 45-degree chamfer bit, which I've got here, get that into the router, if that focuses, get that into the router table. And what we're going to do is essentially we're going to run that on all edges of this, every single edge on there. We're going to run a little tiny little 45mm chamfer on there with this little diddy bit, and it's just going to make it look a little bit nicer. So let's get that into the router table and let's get that done. Okay, so that's all our components machined. So you can see on there that I've just taken the corner off not massively, maybe about a little 2mm chamfer right the way round, and I just think it gives the doors a little bit more of a premium feel to it. So the next stage now is we need to actually measure up for our panel. So the best way that I found to do this is to actually put our door together. So let's do that. Okay, so you can see that I've got our door loosely clamped up here. Don't go over tightening these, because what you can actually do is bow it all out of shape. So just nip them up, don't need to go mad. But what we need to do now is actually measure for the size of our panel. So you can see here where we put that groove in the edge, that's effectively created a loose tenon. What that allows us to do is we can actually measure for the width of our panel by measuring that. So if I measure between them 2 points there, I've got 228mm. Now, we don't want to have panel tight, because when we come to put all this together, if the panels are milled too wide, it's going to make it a nightmare to try and put this together. So I'm going to shoot for about 226, just to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room in there. So I'm just going to write that on there. 226mm is the width of our panel. Now we need to measure for the height of our panel. Now my groove is 12mm deep, so whatever the groove, the depth of your groove is, mark that on the one side there. So I've got, sorry, that's 12mm there. I was measuring wrong there. And then what you can do is put your ruler into the groove on this side, if you can see that I'm doing that. So make sure that's right in and bottomed up, and then we can measure to that mark that we put on this side. So I've got 337, I'm gonna go for 335 just to be on the safe side. So 335, that's the size of my panel. So I'm gonna get that cut, and then we can look at getting this together. Okay guys, so you can see here that I've just dry fitted our panel into there. You can see it's not glued up or anything at this, but it just doesn't help to just put it together in this stage just to see how it fits. Now, what I did forget to show you guys, which is quite important, is I cut some of these. So I measured the width of our false tenon groove, if that makes sense, and I just cut some of these. They're well over length at the minute, but they're just going to slide in the bottom to give us our false tenon. So what we're going to do now is actually turn our attention to how to glue this up. Now this is quite important, because this will make or break your door, whether it's going to be any good or not. So follow the steps in this and it should be absolutely fine. Okay guys, so it's now time to actually start assembling our door. So I like to do this in the vise at this stage. If you don't have a vise, you can do it laying flat on the bench, but I just find it easier that way. So what we're going to do is going to put a nice bead of glue right the way along this groove here, along both sides. Then we can put our panel in. And then we'll repeat the same process for all the other styles. So glue along all the edges. Get a little bit of glue on here, but you don't have to go mental with that, because I'll show you how to do that afterwards. Okay, so that's everything loosely clamped up. We're not going for mentally clamped up at the moment. We just want to get it roughly clamped into place. What we're going to do is we're just going to check for square. And the way we're going to do that is we're just going to measure the diagonals across our panel. So I've got 361 in there and 361 in there. So if you're not square, if it's longer in that axis, you need to compress it, and vice versa. So nice and easy to work your way out on that one. But yeah, we just want to make sure we're square. Just dollop some glue in there, quite a bit. And then push them home. Give them a nice little tap if need be. Okay guys, so that's that all glued up in clamps at the minute. We're going to let that set up. I'll probably let it set up for overnight, but realistically, a couple of hours would probably be all right with that Gorilla Glue that I'm using. Even normal PVA, to be honest, a couple of hours would be fine. So I'm going to let that all glue up, and then I'll join you guys once that's all dried up, and then we'll have a little look at finishing it all up. Okay guys, so still the same day, but I gave it a couple of hours, and there we go, we are out of the clamps, as you can see there. So next process that we've got to do is now trim off these loose tenons that we've got in here. I'm not going to bother because this is only for the purpose of you guys, but it'll be the time to give it a real good sand and fill some of these remaining gaps in here. But let's get these cut off and then we'll have a look at hanging the door and we'll take it from there. Okay, so we're going to use a nice little Japanese flush trim saw just to cut these last little bits off, and then we'll be good to go. There we go, guys. You can now see what we're left with. So we've got a nice flush tenon in there. If you've got your joint really good like I have on this one, it doesn't actually require any filling. But if you have got a couple of little gaps in there, just put a little bit of light filler over there. It hasn't got to be anything too heavy, and just give that all a good sand down. Like I said, I'm not going to bother sanding this just purely because this door isn't actually going to be used for anything. It's just a little mock-up for you guys. Okay guys, so it's time to now put our hinges in, and we're going to be using these ones, as you can see here. So they go in this position, this way round here, and then you have a retaining plate that goes on the other side, which I'll show you in a minute. So what we want to do here is, I generally measure 100mm down and 100mm up, but this is quite a short door, so I'm going to go 70mm down, 70mm up, or whatever way you're looking at it, either or. And what we need to do then is square that line across. And then what we want to do is, I'm going to do it with the square actually, but we want to measure in from the edge of our door to our point 22.5mm. Now the 0.5 millimetre is actually quite important. If I can get that to focus, you can see I'm set to 22.5mm there. So we're just going to put a little mark there. That's our little crosshair that we're shooting for when we drill this out. Okay, so here we go. So you can see I've got my 35mm Forstner bit in there. You can see it's got a little point on the end there that you can see. We want to put that right on our crosshair and then drill down. We're going to stop at that point before we go right the way through and just check that, and that's bang on. You can see that this plate here is sitting nice and flush. So I'll get the same done on the other one, and then I'll show you how to square that off. Okay, with normal hinges like Blums and that, you can actually either put a square up to the side of it to make sure that's square, or what you can do is put both of your hinges in like that, and then use a nice straight edge up against the back to make sure they're square. With these Hettich ones, you can't do that, unfortunately, because of the shape of them. So I'm just going to rely on doing it by eye. But ultimately, you want to get these two holes the same distance in from the side. Okay, so we're back over at our makeshift cabinet that we've got here, and what we want to do now is just attach this onto the door. Now, you can measure this and mark them and all the rest of it, but I don't bother. I just sort of like place them up and then screw them on, to be honest. So if you guys haven't seen the video that I did about 2 years ago now of making this little jig here, yet again, I'll link it up in the corner here. This is like couple of scraps of plywood and a little washer, and honestly it really makes life easier just to hold that on. I would seriously consider making one of them because it makes this process a lot easier. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is just prop our door on, and then we can do our screws up and we're in. There we go, now we're all screwed on. Let's see what it looks like when we go to close it. So it should be a lovely soft close action if you've got soft close hinges. And there we go, I'm gonna call that one done. Actually, that ain't come out like a bad little cabinet, so I might end up using this in the end. Might become a route bit cabinet or something, I'm not sure. But yeah, there we go, guys. Nice and easy process for you guys. If you've got any questions on anything that I've done there, if you don't understand anything, let me know down in the comments and I'll get back to all of you guys. I just want to take one little minute to mention the fact that I've now started up doing membership videos. You can hit the join button just next to the like button, and you can see some extra content down there for you guys that are members. Like I said, if you're not going to become a member, it doesn't matter. All the content that I do normally will carry on normally. There's just some bonus content there for you guys that have asked me for it. But yeah, guys, I'm going to leave that one there. If you've got anything from this video at all, hit that like button for me. It really helps me out. If you can put the word router table down in the comments for me, just lets me know who's got this far into the video or not. Really helps me out to know who's watching the videos right the way through. But like I said, if you want any advice on this at all, hit me down in the comments and I'll get back to you all on that. But I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.